Welcome to another episode of DevOps Fundamentals. In this episode, we're going to talk about automated testing. It's a massive topic, but that's why we have a good friend of ours, Chuck, here to help us talk through it. So just to introduce ourselves, I'm Thiago Almeida. I'm leading the series here. You can follow me on Twitter at NZThiago. And Chuck, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Charles Sterling. I'm a senior program manager on the Visual Studio team. Been with Microsoft for 25 years. By education, I'm a marine biologist, and as I was telling you, love fishing. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. All right, so when we were looking at where it fits inside a whole software development lifecycle, testing, it's basically everywhere. We have it there in development and testing, release and monitoring and learning, because it sort of fits, depending on the type of testing that you're doing, it fits in almost throughout the whole software lifecycle. We've also been talking about throughout the series on mapping from an idea of DevOps, the practices, and then down to the actual technology that you can use to implement. So at a 100 level, if you're looking at streamlining the pipeline for frequent and rapid deployments into production with high quality, and I guess that's the key point here, we are at the 100 level, and then that's where the practice of automated testing comes in. And then from there, you can map to a bunch of different tools and processes that you can use to actually implement that practice. Like we have there unit testing using Mocha or MS Test, or Selenium web testing, or load testing, and etc. So that's what we're going to cover today. So here...
No, go ahead. You're on a roll.
On the automated testing part, that's where you run, well, one of them is unit testing. So you can run integration and unit testing automatically attached to a continuous integration pipeline or some other means. What are the types of testing that you would include in this section?
Well, so when we think about testing on my team, we actually think about it as three different workflows. And they actually really map to the persona or the people doing it. Now, automated testing, as it says here, is kind of your developer. He's the one writing the unit tests. He's the one looking for things like overflows. And he wants to reduce the cost of the integration by making sure that those tests run every time he does a check-in. So that way, there's no ugly surprises going out and saying, how come my methods aren't working because of my dependencies? So that's what automated testing is. And that's really around kind of that developer persona. But of course, we want to integrate that all the way end to end with the first slide that you showed in the DevOps cycle. So when we talk about the other two personas, we want to make sure that their efforts are integrated with the manual tester or the person who is actually going out and taking a look at it, doing the smoke test runs. And more, those people are looking and smelling like operations. Now, we can't cover that today. As you said, it's just a huge topic. It's a mess. But I think you should have either me back or a good friend of mine, Claude Rummerald, and we'll talk about dev test labs and integrating manual testing into that continuum. So that's two. So we've got manual testers and we've got test automation as for developers. And of course, my favorite topic is load testers. So usually these are the performance engineers, kind of a specialized operations team who make sure that the application is up to the right performance and actually has the capacity. So when the demos that we're going to walk through are going to go out and assume that the developer has actually got the stuff working on his box and he's ready for that next step. You went from the 100 level, I've got it working here, to it's now time to actually go out and do it at the team level with continuous integration. Right. And same thing with the load testing, is I'm going to assume that the performance engineer has gone out and figured out what the scenarios that they want to do. Because one of the first things that you need to do as a load tester is say, what questions do I need answered? How fast should the site work? How many users should, and they've already done that. And now it's actually time to actually test those hypotheses. A big part of DevOps is making sure that you've got hypotheses going in and you can validate those actually part of this. So, God, we've looked at what, 4 slides, 5 slides?
Yeah.
It's probably time
for demos.
For looking at some demos.
So when we were talking before, you mentioned a big difference between the automated testing at the beginning and then the load testing from the other side. So one is the validation that the code and everything else is okay before it's deployed, and the other one is the checking the capacity and the performance of it from the other side.
Exactly right. And again, in some cases, there's actually a third pivot you'd look at is stress. Everything's going to break. It's also interesting, in addition to checking the performance and the capacity, is finding out what breaks. Purposely going out and saying, I'm going to find out where the code has got faults, and we're going to smash it until it falls apart, and then we're going to fix that part, and we're going to smash it again. It's a little bit different than performance, and it's different than capacity. Because capacity, you can work your way around it by doing what? It says auto scaling somewhere, I think, on the slide, or it did. Oh, here it is, right here.
Yeah.
I could actually, I could solve capacity problems by just adding a rack mount or a data center. Worst case scenario is a data center, right?
Yeah.
Stress testing goes out and says, within a constrained set of resources, where does it fail first?
Right.
So, anyways, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. And as always with these slides, we have the values there, more business-focused values that you can look into as well for both load and automated testing. So make sure that you pay attention to those. But I think now it's time for some nice demos.
Yeah. Okay. So as Tiago's been showing through his series, let's start with the demo app that I actually helped you guys write. So let's go ahead and Alt-Tab into the Azure portal. So let's go ahead and right off the bat, you'll see that in the planning phase, I can actually start getting some information from my application insights. And this is also goes all the way back to the last one of my monitoring. Right. This tells me that something happened here where my server response time was actually much, much slower. I would want to go out and start drilling into that, but that's a monitoring session. I think you're actually going to talk to Raul about that later in the series.
Yes, we have another APM session.
Okay. So I'm gonna not steal any of his thunder, but I'm gonna go out and say, I want to know what's happening there, or maybe I can replicate it and take a look at those particular pages, because I actually know what deployment was made here. I can take a look at that.
Right.
So let's go ahead and take a look at the app, and maybe actually put on maybe a bit of our manual tester hat, just briefly, and take a look at it. So this is the Parts Unlimited website, and I can go ahead and see if it's running right now. By the way, this is a live URL, and a lot of people are deploying to it. Me and Tiago have got a lot of helper bees that go out and do deployments all the time. So it's not always that we hit the URL and it's running and it's up. Sometimes it's down, but those will actually make just as interesting sessions, because we can go out and say, let's figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm a tester at heart, so we go out and figure this out. Now, the page that actually I thought was actually having problems was our recommendation service. Let's go ahead and go back in the Azure portal and go into our tools menu, and you'll actually see something that my team's been working on to enable the operations team to go out and validate the performance. And you'll actually see that there is something called performance test. That wasn't there that long ago.
Right.
And it says that there is no test found. Well, we need to fix that. Obviously, I haven't been playing with this, just coming back from the New Year's. So I haven't actually been playing with this for a little bit. And it's saying, what URL do you want to use? And you'll notice it
defaults to
pre-populated.
the website.
Yeah, and it defaults to the website URL. Now, in the next couple of sprints, I don't think this is NDA. I think I can tell you, among friends anyways, that we're actually going to give you multiple options here. You're going to have a drop down of some of the URLs, if we can actually identify those. We're going to be using application insights to actually figure out what you're going to, what you're looking at.
Right.
And then also be able to import web tests that your performance team has created. So your operations team can go out and say, hey, let's look at that shopping cart scenario. Let's load that and figure out what our performance is. And let's go ahead and name this. I don't know that we're going to take a look at it in Visual Studio, but we'll call it Tiago. Apparently your name's got a P in it today. The West US is actually where I am hosting this application, so it's defaulting to that location. My user load, now our SLAs that we established with our good friend David Tazar is that we should actually have this application support 500 users, at least with a, I think we decided like a 5-second response time.
Right.
So what you saw right there, guys, I don't know if you saw how long it took me. I don't know, was that about 30 seconds?
Yeah.
And I was chatting and spelling the names wrong. I created a load test to make sure that a endpoint was actually meeting an SLA. Oh, it's queued. Let's go ahead and open Tiago up. And what it's doing at this point is going out and actually spinning up a Azure VM, putting the agent in it. So this is important that I actually reiterate what's happened. It's a new VM that we actually have got that agent running into. So that means if you run a load test and somebody else comes off later, it's not going to see any of your assets that you put up there.
Right, and that's the the load testing agent.
Actually, it is the load testing agent that we run for the cloud service.
Right.
We're looking at actually doing things like making that available to your subscription. That's a little ways out.
Okay.
So, but yes. So, anyways, why don't we actually? This will probably go for a couple minutes. Actually, the longest I've ever seen it take about 3 minutes. But I don't think we want to wait 3 minutes for this to
we
come
can
up.
come back to it. And
Yeah, I was going to
check it
say.
out.
Typically, I have one already ran.
Yeah.
But I just didn't prepare this. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back in a second. Now, the thing from this is I want to go from that manual tester, and I actually want to show you how I would actually put this into my CI pipeline.
Right.
And show you how I would take the developer resources and put it in that same CI pipeline. So let's go ahead and take a look at taking these exact same assets and actually put it in our release pipeline. So what I actually went to is a new tab on my partsunlimited.visualstudio.com. This is where we actually do all the check-ins and the building of that application. And what we'll see here is actually I've got a build tab itself. Now I'm in a team project called Corey's Parts. Do you know Corey Fowler?
Yep.
Okay, so me and Corey were actually got our own separate branch, and we actually been playing with PHP versions of this. So something for you to know is that we actually have a PHP one out there. And you'll see that I've actually been playing with all of these TR builds for all day. Actually, you'll see that I've been playing with this last 10 hours, it looks like. But we're going to go out and create a brand new one. And I'm not going to start with any of these. This is kind of cheating. I want to show you how we actually got to this. So I'm going to start with an empty one. And what this is doing right now is asking, since this is a Git repository, which branch of your Git repo are you working with? You know, the Parts Unlimited has got several different branches, like the 4.5 branch and the 5.0 branch. In this case, me and Corey were working in main, and we're going to continue working in main. And I could even actually check this checkbox right here, but we're not. I'm going to show you again. I'm not going to cheat. I'm actually going to show you where that is at in that build definition itself. So let's go ahead and add that step. Now, this particular version of the Parts Unlimited application is a Visual Studio project. I know that you guys have got a Java one that you built, but that's not the one that me and Corey are playing with. So I'm going to go ahead and build that. And you can kind of see that it's snuck in there behind there. It's one of the things that always catch me out is the fact that you don't see it popping up. The next thing that we want to do is go ahead and run those unit tests that our developers have written.
Right.
So you go ahead and add that Visual Studio test. And what these are, actually I don't know that we're going to take time out to show those are, is that test, this test, let me highlight it, is going to run on the build agent. Right. So if I had 100 unit tests, it would run it on the build agent.
So that's the unit test.
Those are the unit tests, yeah. And actually, I can go ahead and, you can't quite see it, add a filter to say which unit tests. So I can go out and add those, or only run those unit tests for shopping cart. So I can actually add the shopping cart criteria. Now, if I wanted to go out and run across 1,000 machines, for instance, I would actually use the test agent deployment task to push this agent out across probably a whole bunch of brand new VMs that just got spun up. Yeah, maybe 25 Chrome-based machine, 25 Firefox, and 25, what's the other browser called?
Edge.
Internet Explorer, Edge. Yeah, we'd have 25 of each. It's only 75. Whatever, you get the idea. So I actually have got a bunch. And then what I would do is go out and add this test agent that says I'm going to run it across those. And I actually would run all those that have the tag of Chrome, on the Chrome ones, all those with Firefox, etc.
So for those two, there's a little bit more of prep work to have those machines waiting for it.
Yeah. And there's two different ways of actually having those machines allocated. I could go ahead and say I want to use all the machines in a resource group. You know about resource groups. Or if you're an on-premise customer, which is most of our customers, they're not going to have a Azure resource group of test machines. They're going to have a lab full of them. What we have there is, let's go ahead and close this and I'll actually show you, is if I go into, see if I can get a right click and open a new tab. I can. A lot of times my right click is my left click and I just go there. I can go into machines. I can go out and add a new machine group, and I could call this one Tiago. And as you can see here, I'm going to reference these with a certain set of credentials. And these could be overridden at the test agent level. I could go out and say, here's the default, those 25 machines that I'm running Firefox on actually require a Firefox specific.
Right.
So maybe call this one demo. And in this case, it may be, oh no, it's actually, a lot of our dialog boxes are clear text for the password. And the reason being is we expect those to be variables.
Right.
And I always forget which is where. And of course, the way I'd reference these 25 on-premise machines that already exist is I'd actually put in their fully qualified domain name or their IP address.
Right.
So let's go ahead and just call this one Tiago dot phishing.com. I spelled phishing wrong too. And again, this is how I'd reference lots of machines, install the agents in them if you didn't already have those,
Yep.
and then run tests across those. But let's go ahead and go back to our build agent that we've already got. Now, this first argument is saying, if I have multiple solutions checked into the repo, which one do I want to build? In this case, the Parts Unlimited just has that one solution in the root. So actually, we don't even need to change that. The next one is going out and saying, what MS build arguments would you want? Now, typically in our scenarios, the one that you want, do you know which one we would usually add here?
Package.
Add in the package, absolutely, guys. So what Tiago's talking about is at the end of a continuous integration, he would want to do a deploy. He's kind of got that operations look and feel about it. So he wants a package that you're going to push out.
Yeah.
So you do like a /p:/, and then the package arguments. Okay. At this point, I think we're good. And this is actually going to run all of the tests that are already in the solution. Let's go ahead and set up that trigger. And we're going to go ahead and set that up to be a continuous integration. Now, this is actually something that's worth showing out right off the bat, is the fact that this is scheduled. One of the things that people want to do with load testing all the time is schedule a small load test, almost as an availability test, to run nightly at like 2 a.m. You know, they don't know if someone's added a server or someone's changed a switched or someone's done a check-in, but they want to make sure that their SLAs for performance hasn't fallen below some threshold. And they pick a low time so it doesn't impact their customer experience and say, I'm going to run that 250 users and see if we actually have fallen below our SLAs.
Right. So in this case here, that schedule for continuous integration kickoff of this, you can do both continuous integration for every check-in, but also you could have a separate build definition just for a load test that you want to run on a schedule.
That's right.
As well.
Yeah, so this one's going to run at 3 a.m. it looks like, 5 days a week, and it's going to run on every check-in. So let's go ahead and save this. Save is up here. I always want to look for save down here. Okay, and we're going to call this one Tiago 1. Maybe we'll create more. Okay, and at this point, let's go back into our code. And we're going to go out and make some change. So now these are actually the notes for Corey. You can actually see what I've done is I've listed a set of different notes for Corey.
Yeah.
But since this is actually part of my repo, if I edit this page and I save it, saving it does a check-in, and it should actually do the kickoff. Best of luck for, your demo. Okay. So we worked together on a demo that he was actually doing at PHP World. I think it worked out well. He didn't get fired, so it must have been okay. Now if I go back to build, this is always scary to work in a pre-existing project because you have no idea. See all these build definitions? I have no idea how many were actually CI.
Yeah.
So again, a lesson in new players, work in your own branch. That would actually obviate this problem or alleviate this problem. And also verify that your trigger is set up to your branch.
Your branch, yeah.
I don't know how many times I've seen where people go out and say, my build isn't kicked off, or I got 5 of my builds and I haven't done anything. Both of them are problems. Or the ones that we run in classrooms is we might have 25 people and they've all done check-ins, and people will say, I know I'm working in the main branch as everybody else. I see theirs, I don't see mine. So let's go ahead, and you can see these already there. I'm going to go back to that trigger. Tiago is actually the one we're playing with. And I want to show something that people may not have noticed, is under triggers, there is one actually that says batch changes. So if you're not seeing your check-in as a discrete build, it's because the default is batch changes.
Yeah.
If you want that behavior, just uncheck that and it makes it very simple. Okay, I promised you a little bit of manual testing, and I showed you that earlier. Hopefully that will actually will work off, manually kicking off a load test, some continuous integration.
So inside the continuous integration, that Visual Studio test step, that's what's going to run any MS tests that you might have inside your code, or I guess if you had XUnit test there, then it would trigger those.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at that. That's actually a great point. So if we go out and we're looking like we're still queued.
Yeah, we're next.
We're next. We're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and take a look at all the builds. We'll actually see one that is run. I think the other one that was just run a second ago was called Insiders 2. Yeah, right here. So let's take a look at see what the heck was Insiders 2. And you'll see the test results that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, you'll see that we do not have for that Insiders 2 a build on build change. That there were 20 passing and
2 failed.
and 2 failed. So the net is actually the fact that we're up 20. Actually, so it looks like everything is a net new. There wasn't an old Insiders 2. So I had to think about that. So this is build on build deltas.
Right.
Not overall changes from day 0. And
so if we triggered this build again and another one more failed, then you'd see the delta between this having.
that's correct. It would actually say it would say 0 here,
Right.
but the 20 up above would still say 20.
Right.
So this would say 0. So I'm glad one of us has got this figured out. Now, of course, what we've done and just before Christmas is we actually added the test results, the build results dialog. So this wasn't there a little while ago.
Right.
And matter of fact, in probably 2 more sprints, you're actually going to see a code coverage tab show up here.
Right.
So you can actually see your code coverage. Right now, it's a separate set of HTML files that you actually have to load. But
Right.
you can actually have this as a hub right here. If we go ahead and maximize this, let's go ahead and take a look at what's here. You'll see that I had 2 of what looks to be my Selenium Internet Explorer tests failing. If I go ahead and take a look at my test run, let's take a look at these. You can see that this is the error message. I get the stack trace itself. There was no linked bugs, which means I probably want to go ahead and create a bug for this. And you'll see that all of the information that you need, what test run, which build, which check-ins, what error messages, including the title is already populated. All I have to do is hit save. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that as far as going out and actioning a rich bug. If I go ahead and close this down and take a look at this test run, this takes me into my runs and I can go ahead and see what looks to be similar data, but if I take a look at my test results, you can see the breakdown of all of them, and you'll see those 2 that failed. So it looks like all of my Chrome and Firefox ones are working, and I only have problems with those 2 Internet Explorer ones, which would either let me kind of clue me in that I need to take a look at those particular machines running it, or take a look at that particular code.
Right.
So it actually starts giving me a trend where I've got particular problems. Okay, so this is taking my unit tests, putting it into a CI pipeline, and reducing that cost of integration. You know, right now we defer it and it gets monumental. It grows and grows to where it's very, very expensive. The other thing I wanted to show you guys is going back in here, is showing you how you could actually do that load test.
Right.
If I go ahead and go back to my Tiago 1 and edit this, so it failed. So if we take a look at it, we have the exact same set of results, which makes sense because it was the same check-in run, the same set of binaries. And the reason it failed is because I had those 2 failures.
Yeah.
So what you'd want to do is edit this.
To continue even if it fails.
And continue on error, exactly. So you've done this a couple of times. There you go. So now what you're going to see is instead of a fail test, actually a warning test that says that you completed, but you actually had some warnings.
Cool.
Now what we want to do is go ahead and add a build step. Go ahead and you'll see that there are 3 types of load tests. there is, let's actually add all three of them. And matter of fact, this one may not be in your guys' accounts. So this is something that is brand new that we'll be showing off today. Let's add the first one. I think I added all three. If I didn't, let me know. So what this one is that we just added, working with a company called Soesta.
Soesta, yeah.
Do you know Soesta?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Soesta does amazingly good load test tools as well.
Right.
Just like Microsoft. And they have a great following in the Java and the cross-platform community.
Right.
And the last thing that we want as DevOps team is having a development team saying, I can't use that whole Azure Visual Studio thing because you don't have support for fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Maven, Jenkins, Grunt, Soesta.
Yeah.
So working with Soesta, they're like, well, we don't want your customers to not be able to use us.
Yeah.
So they've actually gone ahead and added their own build task, and you'd go out and reference your Soesta connection that you've already got. This is both authentication mechanism and a billing identity.
Right.
Okay. And then finally, the composition name. The composition name is exactly like one of our Visual Studio load tests, where you go out and specify which web tests you want to go, and actually which mobile tests in their case.
Right.
So
I noticed there's Mocha testing steps there. So just like for load testing, we have support for other load testing tools. We don't only have Visual Studio test options there. If you're just running JavaScript and you have Mocha tests inside of your JavaScript code, you can also add the step there for.
Absolutely. One of our primary driving principles is to let you use whatever testing framework you're already using. You saw that in my tests, what was failing, Selenium tests were actually being run.
That's right, yeah.
So I actually reference those for my unit tests, which is certainly one way of doing it. If you have Selenium Grid, you could reference that. And then we actually have a publish. If we don't even know what kind of test framework you have, you can still go out and shell it back to them and publish those results as part of your build. So again, JUnit, NUnit, XUnit, Selenium, we run them all, and we actually should provide a better flat platform from doing that.
Great.
Okay, so
back to the load testing.
Back to the load testing one. So we actually have two that we supply from Microsoft. The first one is a quick web performance test. And this is saying, just like the Soesta one, which Visual Studio Online account do you want to have the build go back into, and which one am I authenticated using? So I'll use this, this Parts Unlimited. I will go ahead and grab this URL. Why did my copy didn't work? Oh, there we go. And wrong place. Oh, look, it worked.
It did run.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a second. So we can find the right build. Here we go. I'm going to give your poor viewers Tourette syndrome walking through all these different tabs. The test name is actually a way for you to go out and start doing reporting and comparing these. So if you remember, I named it in Azure. So I can run a test in my build, I can run it in Azure, and I can run it in Visual Studio, but I can compare all three of those.
Right.
So if it's something that your operations team ran in Azure, they might want to say operations 1. And us, we'd go out and say CI load test 1. So I know that it came from a CI build,
right,
etc. Again, you'd probably do more descriptive than this.
So is this the same as the one that we triggered from the Azure portal?
This is the moral equivalent to what we just showed inside of Azure. Cool. So again, whether or not you do it inside of, I can show you it inside of Visual Studio Online, inside of Azure, or inside of Visual Studio, or inside of my CI pipeline, I can actually generate those load tests across all of them and run comparison and trend analysis. Use the tool that makes sense for you, but make sure you get the same quality shoved back upstream, making sure that you're meeting your performance SLAs. Now, in addition to this way of looking at simple URLs, we actually have a way of referencing scenarios. So if I want to reference, maybe it's 8 web tests, I do a check-in, I add a product, I do a checkout, I calculate the tax, and these are all different web tests that I'm using in series, or actually maybe in parallel. I can run these in parallel as well. I'm going to go ahead and reference those in my repo. So let's go ahead and reference the exact same subscription. Take a look in my repo on my local test settings file. And while I'm here, I think I have a load test in here. I just want to make sure what it's called. So my load test is called homepage.loadtest.
Right.
So let's actually, while we're here, let's just cheat and copy. So that's my load test what it thinks is the default, which is wrong, I have my home page load test. Oh, actually, this, did I not hit find it? I must not have hit OK. I must have hit escape or something.
No, that's the folder.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So let's point to the right folder. I'm glad, again, one of us is paying attention. And the reason you point to that folder is because your web tests are referenced by the load tests.
Right.
And it's going to expect them there. And then also your load test settings file, which is actually this first one, will have batch scripts for doing cleanup, tear down, fix up, etc. for your load tests. So again, it's going to expect those to be under that directory.
So these are all load test files that you created in Visual Studio.
I did.
Then saved that as part of the code and then checked it in.
And then I checked it in.
Yeah.
That's right. And again, we are going to offer a richer authoring experience. That's a little bit awkward to say. In both the Azure portal, so you can actually reference multiple URLs, or JMeter.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that or not. We're actually, I think it's actually enabled in this. Let me show you that. A little bit of sneak preview for your users, in addition to web tests that I already told you about.
Cool.
So let's go ahead and save all of this. And as you would expect, if I go out and do a check-in, I could kick all of this off, and they're going to run through. And of course, this last load test, I think it's actually set up to run for like 10 minutes. So it's going to take a while. And probably something that you want to do intentionally, and maybe not something you want to do as a CI pipeline, but probably more something as a CD pipeline, where you have a test environment with a manual approval.
Right.
Have you gone through the release management stuff yet?
We're going through that next with Donovan.
Donovan, great friend of mine. Matter of fact, if you look on my screen right here, I don't know if you guys can see the screen, I actually have one of his stickers. The reason I was late coming over here, I was just talking about it.
Okay, great.
Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one that ran. So right off the bat, scroll down, actually scroll over and scroll down, and you'll see that our average response time is 2.8 seconds for all of these until something happened here. Any idea what happened there? You know, that's when we kicked off the build. We did the CI build, and what was running at that point was all of those unit tests. So we saturated our poor web server, and now we went from a 2-second response time to 21.
Right.
But overall, this is telling us that the code that the guys have done have got a 2%, a 2-second response time, and those failures didn't occur until we actually saturated the box.
And the SLA was 5 seconds?
The SLA was 5 seconds for 500 users, and I think that's what we're running, was actually 500 users. So David Tazar and the team that actually helped us build that Parts Unlimited application, I think we're there. I know that when we were early on, we had some issues with some of the controllers.
Yeah.
I think the recommendations view was taking a long time.
Right.
And we ran all those down. So again, CI integration with performance and unit testing really went out and showed us without any additional work where the problem was and what we needed to do to solve it.
When we cover the APM, the automated performance monitoring, we're going to show the recommendations tab and how you would go about finding out why it's taking so long to load as well.
And I would have expected to actually see another shark fin right here for that. And what's happened is probably the same latency for the spinning up that unit test. We're actually just seeing right here.
Right.
Otherwise, you would actually see a shark fin exactly like that one, going all the way up to 21 seconds.
Yep.
So again, I had a great time.
Yeah.
If you can have me back and we'll walk through the manual test stuff, I would love to do it. Oh, I know. I promised to show you the JMeter. Yeah.
Yes.
So if I go ahead and go into test, you'll see that load test is now underneath the test hub. It wasn't there before. So this is now getting moved to one place for all of your test assets. Whether or not you're a manual tester, you're looking at test automation runs, or a performance tester looking at your load tests, you'll see that two things are going to come out as brand new. First of all, I can take a look at all of the runs that I've done. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, where are my runs? And you'll see that I have done 4 runs since we've been sitting here, or since we've been, actually no, a couple of them were 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
Some of them were a couple days ago, actually. And I can go out and say new, wait for it, Apache JMeter.
Right.
So,
Cool.
You're not going to find this in your accounts, but if you are using JMeter and this is something that you want, email us. We know how to hook you up. It's my team. And we'll enable this feature flag. Have you talked about feature flags?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll enable a feature flag on your Visual Studio account. So when you log in, you'll actually see new, and you'll actually see Apache JMeter, an exciting new offering for the load tester and the DevOps team.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to cover feature flags in the advanced topics episode as well.
So with that, I was actually going to hand it back to you, if that's okay.
Yes. Yeah, so as from that you saw, we covered quite a few different types of testing. The main one was unit testing that we put into our pipeline, and then we also covered load testing as well. So thanks, Chuck, for those demos. They were pretty cool. And as usual, we have here a list of resources for you to check out. The key ones that we wanted to call out are the ones at the end there. So one is the hands-on labs that we have for Parts Unlimited, aka.ms/parts.hol.
I was just looking at these. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah,
You guys have done a
they're
great job with those.
And there's a couple of testing ones there, so definitely check them out. And then we also have 2 URLs for you to go and check all of the test content that we have from Microsoft for you to look into, aka.ms/vstest, and another one, aka.ms/vstest content. So check them out, and I think that's it from us.
Tiago, thank you for having me aboard.
Thank you, Chuck. That was great.